Ladies and gentlemen, it is 12:42 p.m. on Friday, March 27, 2020. I am Master Thich Thong Lai. I would like to extend my warmest greetings to all my compatriots overseas and to the people in the country. This morning, I'd like to take a spare moment for an update on the situation of the Chinese virus outbreak in the world, as well as in Vietnam. This morning, I received a letter from my disciple who is working at a cremator in Ho Chi Minh City. He asked me if I know that the Department of Natural Resources and Environment sent an urgent letter to the cremators. They instructed the workers to prepare to incinerate those who were sick with Chinese virus that were about to die. My disciple asked if this letter was unknown in America, whether the overseas Vietnamese community had seen this letter. And I told him that I had seen this letter. So he asked me to sound the alarm for the people in the country to know that the situation in Vietnam is very, very critical. Do not believe in the number of dozens of people infected with the corona Wuhan. This is a confirmed information that I have shared from Trung Wook Wee's Facebook this morning. And now I received this message from my disciple who didn't dare to say his name, was working in a crematorium in Hanoi City, Ho Chi Minh. He received an important document from the Department of Natural Resources and Environment in Ho Chi Minh City. The document directed that the incinerators must work full capacity during an emergency to solve the problem, to save money, labor, and can lessen the government resources. The incinerators must burn the people who are infected with the corona Wuhan while they are still alive. This Buddhist followers have talked to me and asked me to warn not the people living abroad, but the people in the country to know so that they can prepare themselves for the coming dark days. And I invite you to listen to my opinion. The fact of whatever happened in Wuhan city of China, it will happen in Vietnam. At the moment, you can see that Vietnam completely lost its sovereignty. Even though internationally, Vietnam still has a government, still is a country with territory, still has a seat at the United Nations, but the Qingdu Treaty was completed by Chinese communists and Vietnamese communists. And what my female disciple, who married to a Chinese communist husband, warned a month ago, has become reality. And what my Buddhist followers who work at a crematory in Ho Chi Minh City was also given an urgent instruction from the Ministry of Natural Resources and Environment on March 28, 2020, requesting all the workers to be mentally prepared to incinerate all those people who are infected with the coronavirus, but they are not dying yet. Now, we can see that the recovery cases from the corona infection posted by the Vietnamese communists is a lie. For example, the United States is a superpower country. The total GDP of the United States is millions of dollars. The United States Congress passed a bill to spend $2 trillion to combat this Chinese coronavirus, but they still struggle. The United States now has the fastest tests. The tests are used to determine if the coronavirus has invaded the people of the United States. Why is the number of infections in the United States so high? Because the United States is a democracy country and it doesn't hide the number of people who are infected. There are many facilities that provide free tests. That is the reason the number of people infected in the United States increases every day. As of now, the United States has the highest infected cases in the world. That doesn't mean that the United States is not the strongest and the wealthiest country. As of an experimental remedy, they use anti-malaria drug and an antibiotic as azithromycin on people with severe infection. This antibiotic will be used for 5 days. On the first day, people take 2 pills, and then they take 1 pill every day after. It is used to treat people with respiratory tract infection. It is combined with chloroquine, an anti-malaria drug. However, some people can tolerate and some people cannot. There are a few dozen cases in New York City cured with this medication treatment. The United States government doesn't want to declare 100% yet because it has to go to a testing company. In the United States, this company has to be reviewed and evaluated to ensure none of these medications will cause any harm or side effect. It doesn't want to mention this, that the vaccine for the Wuhan virus is also in the testing phase. It has been experimenting on real people, but it has not yet been approved. It needs to be tested for a long time to ensure no harmful reaction or side effects will occur. A country as strong as the United States with an abundant budget but still has not been able to stop the virus. How can the communists without any money and with debts up to their nose can stop this virus pandemic? Can you think who will know if the communists can stop the outbreak or not? Take a look at the 2 most powerful city leaders in Vietnam. The president of Hanoi City, Nguyễn Đức Trọng, he has a son studying abroad in the United States, and he told VOA radio station of the United States that he advised his son to stay in the United States to avoid the outbreak of the Wuhan pandemic. He told his son not to return home. So why is Nguyễn Đức Trọng, a man who is governing Hanoi City, asked his son to stay in the United States? Even though the United States has the highest infected cases of the Chinese virus pandemic. Is he out of his mind? Think about it. The president of the Hanoi City does not allow his son to come back to Vietnam to avoid the Wuhan virus pandemic after Vietnam claimed that they had cured 17 cases. Instead, he told his son, who is studying abroad in the U.S., to stay put to wait through this pandemic. I have repeatedly emphasized that the person who knows best about the real devastation of this Wuhan virus are senior leaders, directors of the Communist Party of Vietnam, Nguyễn Đức Trọng and Nguyễn Thiện Ngân. And Nguyễn Thiện Ngân also issued instructions to the Department of Natural Resources and Environment to sign an urgent letter dealing with the situation in the coming dark days. The cremators were instructors to prepare for incinerating the people who are infected with the Chinese virus while they are still alive. Those who work in the incinerators must prepare their mentality because the communists now do not have enough sick beds nor money to treat people infected with the Chinese virus. You must know that the United States has to spend more than $2 trillion to provide aid for this pandemic. They provide the people money and medicine to stop this disaster. As superpowers as they are, they still haven't been able to treat nor stop this pandemic. If the United States couldn't do it yet, do you think the Vietnamese communists could? Their border gates have been opened freely from Lunar New Year's in January till today, yet there are only a dozen cases of infection. So, you look at their numbers and it's conflicting with each other. Wing Duk-chung contraindicated himself when he told his son in the United States to stay put and wait for the pandemic to end. Why didn't he ask his son to go back to Vietnam, where the disease has been cured? Were there only a few dozen cases of infection? Instead, he told his son to stay in the United States, where tens of thousands of cases were infected and over a dozen patients dies. Anybody who had a normal mind must understand. The puppet Prime Minister Nguyen Song-Phuc issued a letter on March 28, 2020. All buses traveling across the country must be suspended. Can you see that if the situation is not dangerous, and if there are only 90 infected people, why would they suspend the entire tens of thousands of north-south passengers vehicles and tens of thousands of passenger vehicles in the western region, paralyzing all means of transportation of the people in the country? My fellow Vietnamese, you should look at these events to know that the danger of the virus had flooded the entire Vietnam. The U.S. aircraft carrier visiting Vietnam for a few days, and now 25 of the crew members are infected. The U.S. government has to completely isolate 5,000 sailors in the Roosevelt aircraft carrier. You can clearly see that the president of Mongolia, who was in the 15-day quarantine after visiting Xi Jinping, the director of Harvard University and his wife, who visited Xi Jinping, was also infected. Just after a quick visit of the leader of China, then all the visitors had to be isolated. Meanwhile, the Vietnamese border gates are still open day and night. You look at the numbers and use the speculation to figure out the situation in Vietnam. Why are there no casualties caused by Corona Wuhan? And all of them recovered? While the United States is a superpower country and the United States could not cure all the infected, but the Vietnamese communists conquered pandemic, all 97 cases were fully recovered. No one died. The president of Hanoi, Wing Duk-chung, must be crazy then. You have the answers already. If it is not dangerous, only 97 people are infected, why close all the public transportation? If this pandemic in Saigon is stopped, why do they ban and block all roads from north to the south? I can tell you this, the situation of the Corona Wuhan epidemic is very serious in Vietnam. It is not as simple as you think. Once again, I ask all my Buddhist followers in Vietnam to be prepared if you have a loved one who is about to die. They will be burned alive per the urgent letter from the Ministry of Natural Resources and Environment. One of my disciples called me to warn you. He is working for a crematorium in Hanoi, Ho Chi Minh City, which he could not tell me the name. If he does, then his wife would be in danger. He warned you because he received the instructions from the Ministry of Natural Resources on March 28 to prepare to burn the infected people who are only infected and suspected. So according to the number of deaths due to the coronavirus Wuhan, the Chinese Communist report to the world, which actually reached several hundred thousands, not only 3,000. You see, the great Italians were only doing trading business with Chinese communists in a one-way belt program, and their number of deaths were unspeakable. So, the Chinese public telephone company announced that tens and thousands of telephone company accounts were out of service. No payment, no canceling contract. They did not talk about the mobile phone accounts only, just landline accounts. There are over 7 to 8 million account holders who didn't pay, no answer, and no one to contact to pay the service fee. From the posting of the global Facebook page, these are not old phones. There were so many iPhones that people had to shove and dump them into the landfills. No one bothers to collect these phones. And Wuhan iPhone are now no longer available when human life is no longer valuable. This is my warning to the people in Vietnam. The urgent document of the Ministry of Natural Resources and Environment was signed on March 28, 2020 to order the cremators in Ho Chi Minh City to burn alive these people infected with the Wuhan virus. The question is, if only 97 people are infected, why should they order to incinerate all the infected people? According to the workers in the crematorium, the first benefit is because if the pandemic breaks out, there is not enough place to leave these infected people in the hospital. The second is the lack of budget. And the third is saving the government a huge amount of money. All the incinerators now are also very scared. Being a Buddhist follower, he probably would do this job as long as he doesn't know. But now that he got the instructions to burn the sick alive, he will have to quit his job. He is very scared. While he was on the phone with me, he said that if he quits his job, the police will force him to work immediately. But if he does as instructed, he will be also guilty of complicity in murder, he said miserably. That was the truth. That letter has been released on the global internet. The people in the country must mentally prepare for the worst situation to come. A second issue is when I spoke to my American friend who lives in the United States. I asked them a while back, they told me that the death toll in the United States had reached over 1,000, and then President Donald Trump will take a very stern action. Now that the number of Americans who died from the Chinese virus rose to over 1,000, and I still have not seen the President of the United States act yet. Then my American friend told me that yesterday, President Donald Trump had a phone call with Xi Jinping, and 6 hours later, the U.S. Navy fired a rocket, a real rocket in the South China Sea. This shot is to warn the Xi Jinping regime. As of now, Xi Jinping is also in the midst of wanting a war between the United States and the Chinese communists to gradually implement revolt. There are images in Wuhan city showing rebels with the surrounding cities for isolating themselves. Wuhan people are starving. The electricity, the internet, and outside information were cut off completely. They were pushed to the end of their ropes and have no way out. And they are about to rebel. Meanwhile, the Chinese communists are still making lies. Yesterday, they claimed that there's no infection in China. The Chinese government was lying. The President of the United States, Donald Trump, in a press conference speech stating the statistic that the Chinese communists claimed all Chinese virus were terminated are untrue. I want to make it clear to you that all domestic flights to Shanghai were not allowed to land. If the city is free of infection, why can't these domestic flights fly to Shanghai? All Chinese communist flights were also not allowed to fly in Beijing. This shows that the pandemic was still raging very large in the Chinese mainland, but the Chinese government is hiding the truth. However, the Chinese communists are hiding the truth. The world is mad at the Chinese communists. Some of the U.S. companies and companies around the world are filing a lawsuit against Chinese communist regime to claim compensation for the reason that Chinese communists concealed the scandal of the biolab in Wuhan city for leaking in 2020. He was arrested after that. Dr. Li Winglang had sounded his voice to alarm. There was a leak of the Wuhan virus in January 2020. He was arrested after that. And I make it clear to you that after this epidemic, the Chinese communists cannot survive because they have to pay thousands and thousands of billions of dollars to the world and many companies for compensation. The world sees the Chinese communists and the Chinese people as enemies. The stigma is happening all over the world. Now, I would like to tell you that yesterday, when I talked with many of my American friends in the United States, they said that the alert of the war between the American and Chinese communists had gone up to yellow. When the orange alert and red alert comes up, there will be a war. I asked them, when exactly will the war be? They told me, and when the United States closes their embassy in Beijing, and when Chinese communists closes embassy in the United States, that is a sign that war will happen. As you see, the United States already signed a defending treaty for Taiwan several months ago. However, after talking to Xi Jinping, the President of the United States, Donald Trump, provoked the tension with China by stating that he would sign a decree to reaffirm the protection of the island nation of Taiwan if invaded by Chinese communists. In fact, the United States and Taiwan had a treaty of protection for the island nation in case Chinese communists brought troops to invade Taiwan. Why did the President of the United States sign an executive order declaring that the United States will protect Taiwan when invaded by communist ships? It is a provocation of the President of the United States against the government of Xi Jinping, and Xi Jinping, in response, giving aid to Brazil in South America, millions of masks to provoke the United States. The war is going to happen, and according to my friends in the United States, it will happen within the next 3 months. Now that the death toll has reached over 1,000, President Donald Trump will act vigorously to protect the presidential seat for the upcoming election season in November 2020. Once again, look at what is happening in Vietnam and observe the conflicting words of the Prime Minister Nguyen Xuan Phuc declaring to close all restaurants and commercial establishments to prevent the epidemic. If there were only 97 people infected with the coronavirus, why did they have to close all 60 cities and provinces? In addition, 200,000 passenger vehicles stopped traveling across in the 60 cities in Vietnam, from the north to the south, from the south to the middle, and from the middle to all the western routes. All routes are all blocked from March 28th, and Hanoi City President Nguyen Duc Trung recommended his son, who is studying abroad in the United States, to stay in the United States, while Vietnam cured the coronavirus, Wuhan, and no casualties. Why stay in the U.S. when there are thousands of cases infected and over 1,000 deaths? Why did he let his son stay in a country without medicine? Why didn't he allow his son to return where there is no coronavirus, Wuhan, but stay in a country that has the highest number of infection? That is the thought that you have at least to think to find the answer for yourself. Why did the Ministry of Natural Resources and Environment issue an emergency document signed on March 28, to all the incinerators in Ho Chi Minh City to burn the infected people of the corona Wuhan without waiting for them to die? That is the answer that people have recognized. I do not need to say much more. There is a black cloud covering the country of Vietnam, and you have to do everything to avoid going out on the streets. Try to isolate yourself to protect your life to escape this great tribulation. Many superpower countries have spent trillions of dollars to fight the epidemic, while the Vietnamese communists are asking the people for money and supplies to help the government against the pandemic. And while Nguyen Xuan Phuc was stupid enough to aid for Cambodia and Laos by giving $100,000 to buy an anti-epidemic mask. Can you, the Vietnamese people, see this nonsense? The 85 million people must recognize what I have seen. I am far away from Vietnam than you are. Therefore, you know better than me. Who would know the critical situation of the corona Wuhan outbreak in Vietnam better than the Communist government of Vietnam, such as the top leaders Nguyễn Đức Trọng and Nguyễn Thiện Ngân? Respectfully yours, and take care of yourself to keep your health safe from entertainment centers and crowded places. Protect your fortune and life until the world finds a cure for the corona Wuhan flu. Respectfully wish Vietnamese people a peaceful life through this pandemic. I am Vulnerable Thich Thong Lai.
Tránh đi các nơi tụ tập đông đảo và bảo vệ tài sản sinh mạng cho tới giờ mà thế giới tìm ra cái cơn thuốc, tìm ra cái vaccine trị được cơn bệnh cúm corona Vũ Hán này. Trân trọng kính chào, chúc đồng bào Việt Nam coi như an lành qua mùa đại dịch này. Tôi là Tỳ Kheo Thích Thông Lai.